All right, here we go. Welcome to Monsoon Awareness Week, the Monday edition. We are going to be talking about heat today, and it's a very good day to be talking about heat because over today and tomorrow across New Mexico, far west Texas, New Mexico, into Arizona, even into their southeast California, it's going to be hot. And we were on, I don't know if you guys were, if you were on the call yesterday watching, but we talked about how this week we could potentially see all of our monsoon threats what we're going to be talking about this week because it's going to be hot here. And then maybe if we can get a chance later on in the show, we'll show the current forecasted path for Hurricane Bud. The hurricane's not going to get up here, but a lot of moisture is. And by the weekend, we could see a lot of rain somewhere in the Southwest. So that'll be very interesting. Let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Tim Bryce. I'm a forecaster with the National Weather Service in El Paso, Texas. I am so excited to be talking about Monsoon Awareness Week. Before I always forget, if you want to tweet a question to us, I've got my Twitter feed open, and the hashtag we'll be searching for is Monsoon 2018. So if you get a chance to get a question, tweet us and we'd be happy to answer them. Also joining me on the call today from the Tucson office, and I've been practicing his name, Carl Saniglio is a forecaster over in Tucson. How are you doing, Carl?
Doing very well this evening. Thank you.
Very good. And then in the El Paso office, in another part of the office, we got a whole bunch of people there. So I got Jason Laney, he's the WCM here. John Fawcett, he's the MIC, and Lance Tripoli, he's one of our forecasters. Got a full room there. All right, jumping over here. Good friend Tim Stefan is up at the Flagstaff office. I say good friend because we got the same first name. I like that. And then Miss Bianca is over in the Phoenix office. How are you doing, Miss Bianca?
Good, thank you.
Miss Bianca has a little camera issue, so we'll get to listen to her. We just won't get to see her. And then we got Alex Tardy. He is the WCM over in the San Diego office. So very good. We got a good crowd here to talk about heat. And you know, the interesting thing, people go, what's the big deal about heat? It's not that big a deal. It just gets hot. But I want to show there's a graphic that actually shows that heat, believe it or not, is one of the big killers. More than hurricanes, more than tornadoes every year. We're talking about it. And by the way, I got it up and going on Facebook too. So I get thumbs up from people. So yesterday we had audio issues. Looks like they're working today. But here I wanted to show this graphic here. You can see this kind of graphic the Weather Service produces. You look at lightning, you look at tornadoes. But if you look at heat, it is by far, especially when you look at the 30-year average, by far, it's the #1 killer. I don't think it's an underrated killer. And the problem with it is that it sneaks up on people and it picks off people, one here, one there. It's a very difficult thing to nail down. It's not like a tornado where it tears through a town. It's not something big like that. But really, in all things, when you add them all up, heat is the #1 killer across the United States, and that is here in the Southwest, we were just very aware of the heat. But even here, it gets so hot. And then the problem that we're going to be seeing in the next 24 hours is that it's going to be hot during the day, and then it's not going to get very cool at night. We're not going to cool down much at all, especially in the lowlands down in the city. And I'm glad that Tim's on the call up in Flagstaff, because we're going to talk about how the heat actually impacts people up at elevation, because you go up into the mountains, it's cool and it shouldn't be an issue. But before I get into things, I'd like Jason to kind of go over what are some of the things that we need to be concerned about heat, and maybe what can we do to kind of take some precautions.
All right, let me unmute here. I just gave a big presentation on heat locally. I know that El Paso is not the only place that gets a lot of heat, but really it's knowing the signs of having too much. What we tell everybody to do is always drink plenty of fluids. It seems to be a no-brainer, but a lot of times it's the simple things that people miss out on. Take plenty of breaks. Don't overexert. Find shady spots to take your breaks. A lot of people are forced to work outdoors. They can't take the entire summer off. But if they know how to beat the heat, they'll be much better. And more importantly, they need to know who to call if there is an emergency. I've got another slide up here that I wanted to share with everybody. And it basically breaks down the heat-related illnesses that we have. And basically, we have heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And you can tell the difference. Heat exhaustion, you start feeling a little dizzy, a little lightheaded. Leading into heat stroke, you start with a throbbing headache. Heat exhaustion, you're sweating a lot. By the time you're heading into heat stroke, you're not sweating anymore because you have completely dehydrated. So you can see the different signs here. Nausea and vomiting is common with both of those, along with a rapid, weak pulse for exhaustion and a strong pulse with heat stroke, muscle cramps. And the thing is, with heat stroke, you could lose consciousness as well. So if you see somebody leading into this with heat exhaustion, get them to a cooler place immediately. Make sure you hydrate them with plenty of water and run cool water over them. Give them a shower outdoors with a water hose if you have to, or use cold compresses. You want to bring that body temperature down. And heat stroke, don't fool around. There's one thing that you need to do, and that is call 911. I've seen signs that say summer means 911 calls, and that certainly can be the case many times. So know the difference between heat exhaustion, heat stroke, know the signs when you've had too much heat, and be prepared to take care of yourself and those around you if it happens.
Very good. And that's a great graphic. I think several of the offices in the Southwest have shared that today. But Miss Bianca, I see we got your camera working. You guys are like kind of the capital of the heat. It seems like like a large metropolitan area. What are some of the impacts that you see in Phoenix where you guys you can get to like 115, 116, 117. It's some crazy temperatures there. How do you guys work with the city and things like that? Oh, you're muted. So
That's why. Sorry, thank you. So we definitely see an increase in the number of heat-related illnesses and fatalities, especially when we start getting to that 105, 110 degree temperature. We try our hardest to work with Department of Health Services, as well as other emergency managers, especially across Phoenix, to try and get the word out there. We also have this really cool kind of program here. It's called like the Heat Relief Network. So we have a bunch of like hydration stations and heat refuges around the valley where people can go and cool off and grab themselves a free bottle of water. So that's something neat that our city does.
Very good. Very good. Now, I don't know, Bianca or Alex, tell me, who has Death Valley in their area of responsibility?
It's Alex.
Alex.
No, it's not me. I wish we had Death Valley.
Oh, it's not?
So I think I was thinking that you guys grabbed it there on
Las Vegas.
It's the Las Vegas then, yeah.
Vegas. That's what it is. Vegas has the honor of Death Valley. Well, Death Valley, as we know, can get some even crazier temperatures being a little below sea level. So, but Alex, you're there in beautiful San Diego, and it's just always sunny and pleasant there at the beach. At least that's what people think. What are some of the things that you guys there do as far as heat when it starts, especially in the higher terrain, just to the east of you guys there?
Yeah, this time you're right, Tim. I wanted to be outside to show you that it is sunny and pleasant. So hopefully it looks like that. I'm sitting outside and it's probably 70 degrees and sunny. But in all seriousness, we have a lot of heat problems even in our area. Sometimes it's San Diego. More often than not, it's inland areas. And that includes our deserts, Palm Springs, Borrego Springs. It includes some of our mountain foothill areas and even some of our major cities like Riverside, San Bernardino, where millions of people live and they experience temperatures well over 100. In the case of Palm Springs, over 120 sometimes. Last year, Tim and everyone, Palm Springs hit 122 4 times throughout the summer. So typically what happens here is when it's unusually hot like that, counties, our cities are very proactive with opening what they call cooling centers. And they can be anything from a library that's already open to a designated community center. But similar to like what was mentioned, these cooling centers will provide not just cooling, but they typically will provide some type of shelter with water, and in some cases even some snacks. Depends on the location. But we work really closely with emergency management, especially the public health, to decide, okay, is this a nuisance type of event, or is this a serious type of event where they may have to extend the hours? Because as you know, the heat sometimes comes on the weekends or during the holidays. And they have to make decisions if they have to extend cooling center hours and have more available. Like you guys, heat is one of those things where it creeps up on you. I'll tell you a quick story. Last year, we were watching a soccer game on my daughter's team, and one of the parents afterwards said, you know, their daughter wasn't feeling well. And that day it was in the 90s. Dew points were in the upper 60s, so it was fairly humid. But the whole moral to the story was she was not just becoming dehydrated, she was getting heat exhaustion, like was just showed on that map earlier. That following night, she was up vomiting and severely sick the whole entire night. Now, the mom came back the next day, and like she became like a heat doctor and was preaching to everyone, you know, what we should do, and this could have been your daughter and all that. I kept my mouth kind of quiet, but you know, it's too late after that. But it's great that she did learn from what happened, and then maybe next time they'll be more prepared and it won't happen again. But this is what we're trying to do here: is get the message out there that you have to take it serious, and there are preparations. Otherwise, it can sneak up on you or even someone young in your family, and not just the older persons in your family.
Very true. And, you know, it's funny how everyone becomes an expert thanks to Dr. Google. But like you said, after the fact, that could have been a serious situation for this woman's daughter. So I guess it's better that she learned that way. But, you know, it's very important. Like Jason showed that graphic ahead of time. Just you know, be aware of some of those symptoms. But the key thing is to not get into a situation where you're looking at heat exhaustion or heat stroke in the first place. And, you know, I've heard some people that they make fun of because we go over the heat tips, like drink plenty of fluids and stay in a cool place. That's just common sense. But a lot of times we, as human beings, we don't have the most common sense, and we make some poor decisions. Or like we've mentioned, maybe your job's outside and you get a little too busy working, doing construction or something, and you didn't take that break when you should have. So these are all just kind of ideas that, you know, we need to all be aware of. And like I tweeted out earlier, I wanted to, you know, be the next 48 hours, whether you're in Phoenix, Tucson, up in Flagstaff, or in El Paso, Las Cruces, check on your neighbors, check on the elderly. If you've got some abuelos or abuelas, your grandma, grandpas, check on them. Make sure your pets have plenty of water and shade, because it's gonna get hot. As a matter of fact, let me Phoenix, the Phoenix office came up with a pretty cool program a while ago. It's called Heat Risk, and it's a neat map to go to. Bianca, what's the best way for them to find this map? Can they just Google heat risk and Phoenix and weather or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I always just tell everyone weather.gov/Phoenix, and then from there you can go under forecast and you'll see the experimental heat risk page.
Right.
I'm sure you can Google it too.
Okay.
Nowadays, I feel like everything's Googleable, but yeah, this is a really neat tool we have, and we share this tool with all of our partners and all of the public, because we try to just emphasize that those days that we have a heat warning out, it's those days that are just too hot and the temperatures are way above what we normally see for that day.
Right. And I know that you guys have actually worked in like climatology. So, you know, is this usual for this time of year, or is it unusual, and things like that. And as I'm flipping through here, you can see that for southern New Mexico and far west Texas, that's going to be the hot day. Then on Wednesday, it was already hot there in southern Arizona, but it's going to be even a little hotter. You see more reds and even some of that purple color. But then, thankfully, as we move into Friday or Thursday and Friday, and we'll talk about what's going on, we've got a lot of moisture on the way and clouds and things. But let me go back here. Even on Wednesday, Tim's up in Flagstaff, and everyone says, let's go up to the mountains where it's cool. Tim, how does the heat impact you guys up there? What's your forecasted high tomorrow?
So here in Flagstaff, we're forecasting mid to upper 80s. And while that may not sound hot to a lot of people, it is up here because not many houses have air conditioning. I don't have air conditioning in my house, and I can tell you it gets very unpleasant when we get up into the upper 80s. So it's just a lot different in the areas. It's harder to find air conditioning, especially just even in your house. So that makes it a lot different, not having that air-conditioned place to go, unlike other areas such as Phoenix and the other hotter locations. So while we are in the mountains, we do still deal with heat, and that heat can be very dangerous up here as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's not. I don't think people think of that because they think let's go to the mountains where it's cooler. But everyone up in the mountains is used to it being cool, and then all of a sudden, so we don't need air conditioning, and then it gets real hot, and that can be an impactful. And what the threat that we're seeing, it's the heat during the day is bad, but at night when you don't cool off. And I know the low temperature in El Paso yesterday and probably tonight it's going to be 80 degrees. And that is just, you go to bed and it's hot, and you wake up and it's already hot. And that really takes a toll on the body. I was looking on our Facebook Live. Susie Ramirez mentioned she's a courier. She delivers packages. And she mentioned how you get so focused on getting the packages delivered that it'd be very easy to forget, I need to stop, I need to slow down, take a break, get some drinks because they're in and out of those trucks all the time. So again, many people have to work outside, and that could be an issue. You've got to just keep in mind, take plenty of breaks and drink things. Carl, there in Tucson, what are some of the issues that you guys work with as far as heat mitigation, or what are some of the impacts there that you see, or things like that?
Well, one of the issues we have here is this is a great hiking area for across. We've got a lot of mountains nearby, trails, but they all generally start off in the lowlands. And we have a lot of people here, permanent residents that hike all the time. They think they can handle the heat, and then basically they come to find out that maybe they can't. And that was the case last year where we were actually pushing above 110 several days in a row. And what people don't realize is, yes, they may be able to have done that in the past, but maybe things are a little bit different this time. Their health is not quite up to snuff, or there's some other issue. They might not be properly hydrated that day. And during that heat wave, even though we were messaging and the media was messaging a lot, we actually had a large number of actually rescues for people with heat-related illnesses. And part of the problem is it's cumulative on the body. And I found that out, working with a lot of the firefighters on wildland fires, is that it's the day after day after day, it wears on your body. And as you alluded to just a moment ago, if you don't have the opportunity to cool off at night or get yourself cooled off at night, that just compounds the situation from one day to the next. So that's one of the big things that we have here is just, people really like to enjoy the outdoors, and they pick the wrong time of the day, like the heat of the day rather than the morning, to go hiking. And we end up having a large number of rescues because of it. Where we really notice that a lot is because of, the snowbird season. If we get an early heat wave in the springtime, we can get a lot of people who are not accustomed to those temperatures. They don't live here. They're from the North Country. They come down here to enjoy the winter, and then they're out hiking in that kind of heat. And the biggest thing we see is just people not drinking enough or carrying enough water with them as they're going about doing their activities.
Again, as we've been stressing here, the heat is one of these, it just kind of sneaks up on you. And I've heard many stories, just like Carl was saying, that I just didn't realize it was that. I just wasn't paying attention. I know that we had 2 fatalities that were hiking down in the desert here. last year, kind of like Carl was talking about. But in our area, they didn't take them long, and they weren't used to this heat. They didn't have any water with them, and they were hiking around, and they didn't. Unfortunately, they did not make it. So it is something that is definitely you need to take seriously and be aware of. I know a lot of people are asking on the Facebook. I got a couple questions asking me how the monsoon season is going to look, and it's a little hard to tell what the whole monsoon season is going to look. But I did want to share a graphic, because if we can make it through the next couple of days, we got relief on the way in the form of Hurricane Bud. Now, I was talking in the office. This is the storm track for Hurricane Bud. This is something we would normally see like in September. I honestly, and I'll let anyone on the panel, do you guys remember seeing a tropical system move in our direction this early in like June?
No, we've had that discussion in our office, and we've got some, I won't say old timers, but folks that have been here a while, and they don't really remember that.
So if this forecast holds, and I've seen various different solutions that the moisture does work its way up. You know, one model says Arizona is going to be the winner. One model says New Mexico. Somebody's going to get a fair amount of rain. Somebody's going to get a lot of rain, and but I think all of us are going to at least see cooler temperatures. And then that was kind of implied on that heat map, as you saw as I went through the days of the week. Tomorrow and Wednesday are looking pretty brutal, but then as we work into Thursday, we get the clouds, especially into Friday and into Saturday. We're actually going to transition to some of our other monsoon threats in that we could see lightning and thunderstorms and even flash flooding rains. So definitely something for us to be, looking forward to, but also something to be aware that we're going to transition pretty quickly from one monsoon threat to another. Mr. Jason, you've got some graphics over there. You got something else you'd like to share with everybody?
Yeah, sure. We were talking about how quickly it heats up in the cars. Now, we just recently, this past week, had another youngster or toddler die that was left behind in a car. And it doesn't take long. It doesn't take several hours to be left in the car. It could be several minutes and you could get into trouble. So what we've got here, and this is a very famous graphic that shows up. Is that me flashing?
Yeah, that does that sometimes. So
let's try it one more time. Let's try. There we go.
There we go.
60 minutes when it's 90 degrees outside, which is probably where we're going to cool off to once we get that moisture in later in the week. In 60 minutes, the inside of the car has gone up to 133 degrees. Now, what we see here, if I go ahead and click on this, I believe I've got something that shows how quickly the car can heat up. So in 10 minutes, a car usually is about 20 degrees hotter inside. That's just 10 minutes. So if we're looking at 105 degrees around here tomorrow, that means you're looking at 125 inside that car in just 10 minutes. So it doesn't matter whether you're leaving a child or leaving an animal, a pet. It's best to leave the pets at home this time of the year because those cars can heat up so quick. You think, I'm just going to run in the store. It's just going to take me a couple of minutes and I'll be right back out. You don't know what the line is like. You don't know if the registers are going to have some problems there. And you see that it just continues to heat up very quickly. About 80% of the total heat rise occurs in the first 30 minutes. And on a typical summer day, the inside of a car can get up to about 135 degrees or so. That can be as much as 50 degrees hotter than the temperature outside. And of course, we have unfortunately heard about all the fatalities for the children who have been left in a car. Again, it's common sense, Tim, but it happens. Never leave children unattended in the vehicle. Always check the back seat. We say beat the heat, check the back seat. And one of the best ways to do that is leave your wallet, purse, or a reminder in the back seat. I like to tell people, leave your cell phone in the back seat with the child. That's going to work perfectly. One, you're not going to be tempted to text and drive. And secondly, how many of us want to go anywhere without that telephone? We're all kind of addicted to it. It's part of life now. But if it's in the back seat with the child, you're bound to go back there. And of course, the phone is one of the reasons people say they've forgotten the child because they took a phone call and they were distracted. So always think about those others in the car. And if you're at home, keep the car locked and the keys out of reach, because outside of unattended children who were left alone in the car, the second greatest number of children that die in heat-related automobile accidents like this are children that gain access to the car. They're outside playing, they get in, they can't get out. So it's very, very dangerous, to say the least, with the heat in the automobiles. So whether it's the children or the pets, which in my case it is my child, always think about those when the summer heat comes our way.
Definitely. And I wanted to throw up the heat index, because a lot of times we're in the desert Southwest and you always hear it's a dry heat. Bianca, I'm going to throw up the heat index here, and can you kind of walk us through how someone can use the heat index chart as far as trying to figure out what the risk is that they're facing on certain days?
Yeah. So, I mean, in simple terms, the more humidity combined with warmer temperatures is going to make the air feel warmer. So if you look at the top side, you'll see the air temperature, and then on the left side, you'll see the relative humidity of the air. And as you go up in temperature and you increase the humidity, you can see more of a drastic change as more. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Right. So you go higher. And that, just like she was mentioning, it just makes your body work harder. It feels much hotter. Now, it's not uncommon many times here in the Southwest. Our heat index will actually be a little below what the actual temperature is, because we are so dry. But there are occasions where we get a little bit of moisture, a little bit of extra moisture, and it's still pretty hot right as we transition maybe into a full-blown monsoon. It's still pretty hot. We're getting a little bit of moisture, and you can start to pop some pretty good heat indexes, and that just makes your body work all the harder. So like Bianca was saying, you kind of find your temperature, you figure out, you look on a website, figure out what your relative humidity is, and then you can kind of get an idea. And you want to, of course, once you start moving into the dark yellows and the oranges on this map, that's when you could be at risk for, like we were talking about before, the heat-related illnesses. So it's always a good idea just to know, even though we say it's a dry heat, that can still have a definite impact on us. Definitely something to be aware of. All righty. Well, we're running out of time actually for today, so I'm going to run down real quickly and kind of take a highlight from everybody, just to see what we can one takeaway from the hangout today. So, Mr. Alex, what's one takeaway that you want the people to get from today's hangout?
Yeah, I think my takeaway is, whether it's a dry heat or a moist heat where it's humid, it's all about being prepared and taking the precautions, because what we've seen is that there's a lot of documented illnesses that come from heat, but there's a tremendous amount of undocumented, meaning people are just going home, putting ice on their head, going to urgent care, and a lot of these are just not being reported. And when you talk to the health professionals, it's pretty staggering how much really is going on kind of behind the scenes. So don't think it won't happen to you, because when we're telling you that the heat risk is high, whether it's dry heat or moist heat, we're saying for a reason that it's unusual heat, and that your body, if you don't take any precautions, like changing your activities to early morning or late in the day and drinking more water, you could easily be a victim.
Very true. It's great that you mentioned that. One of the things that I like to run, and I tell people I'm old, so I don't like to be uncomfortable. So I have a very narrow time when I can run outside, and it's getting into the summer. I'm not running outside, because even when I run in the morning, it's not cool enough to be doing that kind of strenuous things. I got 2 months in the spring and maybe 2 months in the fall, and then it gets either too warm or too cold. So but just like Alex was saying, make adjustments. If you don't have to be outside, don't be outside, especially like I'm saying over the next 2 days. It's going to be a pretty serious situation over the next couple of days, and I want everyone to be safe. Tim, up there in Flagstaff, what's one of the takeaways from today's hangout that you'd like to share?
Just similar to what I talked about earlier, a very popular hiking area in northern Arizona. We've got the Grand Canyon, we've got Sedona, A lot of great trails around Flagstaff, Lake Powell. But just because you're at higher elevation does not mean that the heat cannot affect you. Just know where you're going, know the weather, be prepared, take plenty of water, and know the signs, as we talked about, of heat exhaustion, and stop what you're doing if you're starting to feel those signs. But just because you're at higher elevations here in northern Arizona, you still need to be conscious of the heat and how it affects you.
Definitely the heat, and then the combination of just the dryness of the air. You're going to suck that moisture out of you, and you need to take extra water, because that combination of that heat and that dryness can really, before you know it, you are going to be in a bad kind of way if you don't have extra water with you. So like Tim was saying, be sure to take plenty of water if you're going to go out and do anything outside. Mr. Carl, there in Tucson, what's one takeaway for everyone today?
I'd say, being prepared. You kind of alluded to it, and it's been alluded to a few times, the water. Today we're, I would say, only 104 degrees, but the relative humidity was 2%. That will dry your body out very quickly, especially if you're doing any kind of exertion. The other thing to remember is that it's a cumulative thing. So if you experience it for several days in a row and you haven't got any opportunity for any relief, I mean, we do have a sizable homeless population around here, or if people can't afford air conditioning or don't have an opportunity, even just spending a little bit of time at the mall or at some sort of store just to get into air conditioning can really make the difference, especially if it's a multi-day event. So just, try to be prepared and make sure you have that water handy. It's really critical.
Very good. Definitely just be thinking ahead, especially, like, I can't stress it, the next 48 hours is going to be very hot, and we want everyone to just be planning ahead. I mentioned earlier pets. Jason mentioned the pets. If they don't have to be outside and they can be inside your house, let them be inside. If that's just not a possibility for you, make sure they have some shade, make sure they have some water. Hey, Jason, what were some of the other kind of parent tips that you had come up with? I remember you talked about walking your dog and testing the ground and things like that.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb is that you actually put your hand on the pavement. If you can't leave your hand on the pavement for 10 seconds, then it is too hot for your dog to go walking on that pavement, because they don't have the same tennis shoes on, at least most of them that we have on. So that's one of the things. And I always tell people, carry along a little bottle of water and a little cup or something, because the dog could dehydrate much quicker than you can, because it's a much smaller body, but the very same heat out there. So if you're going to be walking for any length of time, make sure they have plenty of liquids. You had a few things you wanted to talk about too, right?
Yeah, but Tim doesn't like me. No, no. A couple of things that people had already addressed. The dry heat, I think, really affects the folks that come out here from the Midwest and the South, and they think, oh, this does not feel hot. My body's air conditioning is working because the sweat dries off me here. It doesn't dry off me back where I'm coming from, and so I feel hot, and I know it's an issue. As you mentioned, dry heat is still going to have the same different types of heat effects. It's still going to be affecting your health. And the other thing is, and I really kind of get ticked off when I see people running when it's 105 degrees. I know that's been addressed already, hiking and all that type of stuff. But these runners, I've heard them tell me, well, I lose more water. I lose more. I'm going to lose more weight. They're going to lose their lives.
Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day, hey, is it best to just sweat it out? I'm like, no, that's the worst thing you can ever do.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. That's about it for me.
Very good. Finally, Miss Bianca, I'll let you have the last word on today's. What's one takeaway that you want from everybody here on the Hangout?
So I know in Arizona, just in the 10 years between 2005 and 2015, 1,300 fatalities occurred due to heat. Wow. And in 2016, we had over 200 people pass away because of heat. So if I was going to point out anything, it would be that take the heat seriously, like as seriously as anything else. And when we have excessive heat warnings and watches in effect, take those seriously, because those are the days that we're pointing out that it's just too hot for you to be outside. So drink extra water, try to avoid hiking. We have the same exact situation here where we have some awesome trails. People don't want to give it up in the summertime, but sometimes you just have to. So we just urge everyone to just take our warnings and watches seriously and just keep hydrated this summer.
Very good. This is all good advice, whether it's your pets, whether it's you as a person, whether you have to work out in the heat or you're just trying to do something fun out in the heat, take those precautions, and maybe let's, over the next 48 hours, let's take a break. Maybe let's change our plans. And I'm a big fan of be sure if if you know your neighbor maybe doesn't have air conditioning, check on them. Maybe an elderly relation, check on them, especially over the next 48 hours. Real quickly, one last thing I want to leave with everybody, and we'll wrap things up, is the Weather Service has a nice webpage on all things heat. So it's easy to go find. It's you go to weather.gov/safety/heat, and they got all kinds of heat-related information, whether it's children and pets, safety for kids, survivor stories, education and outreach, all kinds of good information there. So I encourage anybody, if you got any more questions or anything like that, to check out that resource. Well, we had a great time today. I appreciate everybody who was watched us on both Facebook and YouTube. You know, tomorrow I'm excited about our hangout. It'll be same time. Just be looking for the link. But we're going to be talking about downburst winds. And I'm excited in a way because in the last year, we had a big downburst right on the El Paso office. So we're going to have some nice graphics to show from our radar for some pictures. But, and then, like I was saying, that could be a threat later on this week as we begin to moisten up with all the moisture headed in here from Butte. So join us tomorrow as we talk about the monsoon threat of downbursts. I want to thank everybody who joined me today. We had Carl from Tucson, Tim up in Flagstaff, Bianca in Phoenix, and Alex over in San Diego. And then, of course, I had Jason and John and Lance were here in El Paso with me. So thanks to everybody for joining me on the Hangout today, whether you joined on YouTube or on Facebook. I appreciate all your time and your great questions and comments. So everyone have a great day and stay safe, especially over the next 48 hours from the heat. All right. Have a good day.